Some EU policy is set in great detail by its treaties, but other policy areas have never been laid out in the Union's primary law. Now, what are the economic imperatives, but also the legal hurdles in that case for EU reform? A new CEPR Policy Insight identifies the fault lines in the EU framework and what can be done economically and legally to repair them. Hello, Philippe.
Hi, Tim.
And hi, Lucrezia.
Hello.
Now, Lucrezia, start me off. You write in this paper, and I've got it here, that the process of adapting the EU policy system within the framework of the existing treaties may be close to reaching its limits. But I thought, Lucrezia, that in policy terms, the EU did pretty well for COVID-19. Are we saying that that is despite the treaty provisions rather than because of them?
Well, in a way, yes, but of course, there is some room of optimism because this time it was different. But, in a way, it followed even, this new ambition and new reactive capability of the EU follow the usual modus operandi of the EU, so that acting in a reaction to external events rather than, planning ahead. And so we have made progress of reforms, since 2010, 2011, in many ways. But we have done it reacting to events and stretching, the legal mandates that the legal, perimeter of the treaty. And also maybe stretching our political capability of doing things together. So I think it's time to take stock and to say what needs to be done, and recognizing that we are not a federation, so that we are, there are binds which are both political and legal. But on the, once we understand what needs to be done together, then we need to reassess the framework in which we operate. Remember that this framework was designed at the beginning of the 90s, in a very different situation. The challenges today are quite different. The macroeconomic context is quite different. So I think it's quite dangerous not to face this problem, explicitly. That makes us more fragile, and sometimes we'll be able to react. This time, as you said, we were able to react. Partly because this was an external event, so there was no suspicions on moral hazard or other problems that typically dominate the discussion in Europe. But we cannot count on that for the future, and definitely we enter an era in which the challenges will be huge.
Philippe, Lucrezia calls it dangerous. How dangerous is it? Is it just that everything gets bunged up, or is this existential?
Well, so during the COVID crisis, it's true that we had some flexibility, but it took a shock of a huge size, once in a century type of shock to show some flexibility. So I think that what it showed is that there is an existential problem, in the sense that the policy system is not working well to anticipate problem down the road. It's once we are in a huge crisis that the system indeed works. We would be better off if we were to be able, in terms of preventing the problems down the road. I'm thinking of some issues such as the banking union, which is incomplete, the problem of issues of sovereign debt crisis inside the Eurozone, etc., etc. So the system is working well when we are faced with a huge shock, but is not working well in terms of anticipating the problem and preventing them.
This paper has a huge scope, so we can't discuss very much of it here. But Lucrezia, the first of the issues that you identify is the relationship between the monetary and the fiscal pillars here. In essence, what's the problem?
Well, the problem here is not so much a legal problem, but it's a problem of interpretation of the design of the Maastricht Treaty. So the the bulk of the principle behind the Maastricht Treaty is this, how to regulate an asymmetric federation in which we have common monetary policy and 19 different fiscal authorities which set their own fiscal policy. And we have established a very strict separation in order to face two potential problems. One is a problem of fiscal dominance over monetary policy that would threaten price stability. And the second principle is to avoid moral hazard from the free riding from one member state to another. So as a consequence, the Maastricht Treaty does not just seek monetary dominance, which is the principle that the central bank should be should be actually be in charge of price stability and fiscal policy should follow, but actually the design implies a separation which is much more extreme than in other jurisdictions, including the inflation targeting jurisdictions, like, for example, the Bank of England. And this is done through various provisions. For example, the prohibition of monetary financing, which it is something which has no clear interpretation. It was meant to imply that the ECB could not do outright purchases, and that principle was actually overcome in 2014 when QE was 15 when QE was implemented. There is the no bailout clause. There is a concept of financial independence of the ECB, which needs to be clarified. And then there is a principle of proportionality, which is a very established principle in EU law, but has been subject to different interpretations and legal challenges. So this has created a problem for the ECB in having a clear, mandate, and I think this lack of clarity could be dangerous for the effectiveness, could impair the effectiveness of monetary policy. So we think also that in the changing macroeconomic circumstances of the last decade, with interest rate being close to zero, the case for monetary policy coordination has increased because the effectiveness of monetary policy has been challenged by the fact that interest rate was at zero, and so that we needed to have a fiscal action that made sense not only at the level of the national jurisdictions, but for the area as a whole. So that would require to have a sense of what is the needed fiscal capacity for the euro area as a whole, and what does it mean? So the fiscal stance have to be coherent with the monetary policy stance. So that would require some form of coordination, and in the paper we discussed that. We also discussed way in which we could clarify, the rules on capitalization of central banks, which would respond to the problem of, the clarification of what it means financial independence of the ECB. And then we also discuss, the interpretation of the monetary financing provision, the no monetary financing provision, and of proportionality. So these are things that, as I said, can be done within the legal scope, but we need a discussion, we need a clarification, and we need to build up ammunition so that this coordination would be possible, going ahead.
Philippe, the second area you identify is the Stability and Growth Pact, being criticised and tweaked over the years. Have we reached the end of the line for tweaking?
Yeah, we think we've done what could be done, and in fact, all the adjustments that took place did not challenge the main problem that we identify, which is the fact that we have a uniform debt and deficit levels, and that doesn't work well. It was not working well before the COVID crisis, and this problem is clearly very much amplified with the COVID crisis, with higher levels of debt and more heterogeneity in the Eurozone. So we've reached the point where indeed we need to have a serious discussion of a reform of the fiscal rules. So we make some proposals. As you know, there's been quite a lot of debates among economists with more or less ambitious reforms, and clearly there's a trade-off between the ambition of the reform and the constraints, some of the legal constraints. So we make some proposals, which is in particular to concentrate on the issue of debt sustainability, because this is what we identify as the main reason, the main rationale for having fiscal rules. So actually, we are keen on saying, yes, in a Eurozone, we need some fiscal rules, because there can be collateral damage of one country accumulating too much debt and being in a situation where the debt sustainability is in danger, in question, and that puts that clearly is a negative externality on other countries. But so what we propose is to have multi-year, for example, 5-year targets in terms of debt reduction and by governments. So clearly reducing a bit the micromanagement of Brussels and putting some heterogeneity, more flexibility too. But clearly the 3% and the 60% rule don't work. I'm not even speaking about the issue of structural deficits, which have been identified also as not working well. So indeed, we are making some proposals. As you know, and there are discussions now. Some other proposals are on the table. It's going to be a difficult negotiation, but as economists, we think that our role is to provide some guidelines. And again, the main point is to say that we need more flexibility and things and objectives which are not uniform for all countries.
When I spoke to your compatriot Olivier Blanchard, he was implying that perhaps we didn't need fiscal rules anymore. You don't go quite that far.
No, I don't know if Lucrezia will agree, but no, we do believe that we need some fiscal rules. Again, because the monetary union is a specific animal from that point of view, in the sense that if at some point, and we've seen that during the crisis, if at some point the debt sustainability of a country is in question, that's going to put into question the fact that this country remains in the Eurozone. So it's not only the problem of debt, it's actually the problem of the sustainability of the Eurozone itself. And so what will happen in this case is that to avoid a huge financial crisis, potentially the explosion of the Eurozone itself, countries will come to the rescue of the country that has a problem with debt sustainability. And that's the nature of the collateral damage of the externality. And that's the reason why we need some rules, but the rules, the 3%, the 60%, we know it doesn't mean much. The rules have to be focused on the issue of debt sustainability, because this is the nature of the negative externality.
So I think that in that sense, Blanchard, the proposal by Blanchard of getting rid of the rules, goes in the same direction, because it also, in that proposal, by him and Jeremy Zettelmeyers, the sustainability is at the center, so that, if the rules have become so flexible, then actually the focus will be on sustainability. The question is what kind of interaction you have between the national and the federal level. What kind of flexibility do you want to give at the national level?
Lucrezia, you also deal in the paper with Next Generation EU, the stimulus package. And you say it's broken political taboos. So does this mean that an EU-level budget inevitably follows?
Well, not really, but, we could use, the NGO is not a budget, but we could use, this is one of the proposals we're making in the paper, to use it as a prototype for something new. Okay, so and we suggest to build on the NGO experience to develop a new vertical coordination mechanism between the Union and the member states. So that's proposal number one. Now, this idea of vertical coordination, in a way, goes in the same sense as the discussion on the fiscal rules. Okay, so what we need is a new form of operandi between the federal and the national level, which would be, in a way, iterative. Okay, so in which the federal would learn from the national and vice versa, and in which the form of conditionality would be different from the typical ESM form of conditionality, and would be maybe linked to objectives that are common to the Union. Climate change comes to mind, but there are others. Also, we have this proposal of creating a standing contingent facility capacity at the EU level that could only be activated in some predetermined circumstances through agreed procedures. This it can be done within the limit of the treaty, while to have issuing of common debt as a permanent capacity, this cannot be done within the limit of the treaty. So, but the contingent facilities could at least respond to the challenge of what to do when the Union is hit by large shocks. So these are our proposals, which in a way are conservative, because what basically we say, also with the support of our legal expert in this paper, is that a lot can be done without putting the hands on the treaty, which is something that nobody wants to do for political reasons. But still, this requires clarifications and especially a common understanding of what needs to be done.
Philippe, do you agree with that? Do you think that we can make these reforms without getting the lawyers to rewrite all the treaties?
Yeah, and in a sense, that was to our surprise. Ex ante, when we had not spoken to these legal experts, we thought that it would be super difficult from a legal point of view, that it would be impossible. And what we learned, and this was a great exercise to have this interdisciplinary exercise of talking to the legal experts, is that in fact, we can do a lot of things without changing the treaty. This is the case for fiscal rules. Lucrezia talked also about the issue of a permanent budget. So in fact, the conclusion that we reached was that the constraints are mostly political rather than legal. If you think about the permanent budget issue, here we can see right now the debates are on the fiscal rules. So we see that the debates are mostly political. They are pretty harsh, difficult, but and they can be also on economic issues, and I can understand that economists disagree on this issue of fiscal rules, but at the end, the constraints are mostly political rather than legal. In a sense, that's good news, but that means that the next debate is going to be difficult on political grounds.
Well, the debate goes on, but this is certainly a huge clarification about what we're really talking about, and we've gone into very few of the policy proposals that you have. So I recommend everyone read the full document. But Lucrezia, thank you for talking about it today.
Thank you.
And Philippe as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks.
This paper combines policy insights, but also legal opinion on what would need to be done to implement them. It is called Revisiting the EU Framework, Economic Necessities and Legal Options. It is Policy Insight 114 from CEPR, and you can download it using the link that's on screen now. Well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.